Shorty's Pizza Shack, thanks to Shorty and to Kyle Ferguson for coming aboard. And JD, another week of bad news potentially for the Big 12 in that the Pac-12, Big 10, ACC scheduling alliance, which I hope they just start calling it the Alliance.
Yeah.
That way I don't have to say all three conferences every time, is going to be official, is official. They're going to do that. It has to do with governance and scheduling, and there's a lot of spider web of different things that come off of this. But like we talked about last week, there's a lot that could happen here, and a lot that doesn't seem to really fit the Big 12 in, and I'm not completely understanding why at this point.
You get the feeling that everyone's sort of like picking on the Big 12 just a little bit. The Big 12, for whatever reason, continues to be left out. So we're going to see. I'm still waiting with bated breath, thinking there's some sort of alternate ending to this to where the Big 12 finds a way in, because in my mind, they have enough pieces to be attractive. Like you said last show, everybody's money's green, including those in the Big 12. So why would you not try and find a way to whittle them into this thing? We'll see, because at the end of the day, it's the SEC and everybody that's not the SEC. So why not, deal them a few cards? We'll see. I'm hoping they get invited to the dance, if you will.
All right, see if you can follow me on this theory. What if, and I floated this on the radio show on Monday, what if they're just waiting out to see what happens so that they get all these teams on the cheap? For example, if I'm Texas Tech and you're Oklahoma State, and we promise wherever we're going to go together. But whatever conference doesn't want both of us, they only want one of us. And again, to our listeners and viewers, this is an extreme hypothetical.
We love it.
What if you don't want one? Like, I don't want JD, I just want Paul,
Fair.
And I'm just going to wait until it crumbles so I don't have to do with any of these other agreements.
I mean, that would be a good business move, because that's sort of been the narrative is, okay, some of these teams are like a package deal. Like we talked about the Texas schools when this first all broke was Texas Tech, Baylor, TCU. They're only attractive as a three-piece. Maybe you just want TCU. Could make sense. I think that could make a lot of sense. I'd be on board with that. That'd be extremely maniacal. That'd be very evil, but it would check out with the way this thing has trended with leaving the Big 12 out.
Yeah,
feels evil.
I do. And it's weird because, and we've all tried to do this thing where we like rank who's more attractive to everybody else.
Yeah.
And I don't really I think they're all I think it's also trying to pick the skinniest kid at fat camp right now. It's just, everybody's got drawbacks, and you can do that with everything,
Turn into the biggest fashion show in all of college football is who is the hottest right now. Is it TCU? Is it Oklahoma State? Is it Iowa State? And yeah, it's kind of a weird time right now. It feels like everyone's on the auction block.
For every reason that you can give me why they're attractive, I can give every school two reasons why they're not.
Yeah.
And so that, I think that's the eighth problem. Like TCU, they keep saying about this Fort Worth market that's not really a thing. It's not really a thing because the Dallas-Fort Worth market classically doesn't care about college sports. They're a pro sports town. It's the same reason why, Miami's kind of lucky to be where they are in the ACC because that market's already, there's already enough, grads of those schools in Miami that already had it, so it's a small school. It's not a big school. It's and you find this more the ratings dominate the college markets. Tuscaloosa, every TV's tuned into to Alabama. Waco, Texas, most of the TVs are tuned in to Baylor. Fort Worth, meh.
Yeah.
And if you look at the attendance at TCU, their fans don't care as much.
Yeah,
they don't care. They don't You go to a TCU game. Believe me, you can get tickets most of the time.
Yeah,
I mean you can get tickets, and so I'm not trying to knock TCU by any stretch of the imagination. No. But again, you want to tell me what's wrong? Baylor's athletic department as a whole is very attractive as far as they're good in everything. They have a really good athletic director. They have really good coaches across the board. They've won national championships in big time sports. Of course, basketball this past year, but they're a school that's now, it's at 18,000 now and on its way to 20. Okay, but are they ever going to be 50,000? No, they're never going to be. Baylor University is never going to be a school with 50,000 people. Or not at least in the, doubling plus 10 in our lifetimes, it's not going to be that, maybe if the population of Earth explodes, in the United States specifically. But again, that's not really what's going on in the USA. So I mean, there's all these things that I do wonder, with this alliance, which has to do with scheduling, why you wouldn't want to schedule some games in Texas, why you wouldn't want more teams in the voting block, why you wouldn't want more of that, unless you are just waiting them out to see if you can pluck this conference on the cheap. If there's no exit fees, if there's no this, if you can pretty much make them any deal that you want, like, okay, you can come to this conference, but here's the deal we're making you. And you're like, well, at least I can get there.
Yeah, 100%. And I think there's so many layers to it to where I'm trying to gauge exactly how much is the TV market worth for you in Iowa or for Dallas-Fort Worth or for Kansas. And like that's obviously a piece of it, but how much weight did you even put on like on-field performance? Because that's something that like gets tossed around a lot, and some people say it's super important. Some people say it doesn't matter as long as you have eyeballs on the TV. Like, where do you fall on that? Because I feel like TCU, in a lot of ways, has probably been like a more attractive brand, but then TV market maybe more attractive in the Big 12, but on the grand landscape of college football, you don't know exactly where they're top 25.
And again, you have to, I mean, like, I think the TV market thing is really a little overblown for TCU. Yeah. Now, have they been good in football? Yeah, they're good in football, and they've hung their own in the Big 12. But I'll tell you, they're the cautionary tale for UCF, Memphis, Cincinnati of like, you can dominate the AAC, right? You can go 14-0. Well, TCU's only done it in the Big 12 one time, and then the rest of the time they've been a good but not great team.
Sure.
So and part of that is when they first came into the Big 12, they were already kind of loaded, and a couple teams were a little bit down, so they were ready to pounce. Like Oklahoma, when they came in, was a little bit down. Since then, Oklahoma's not been down.
Yeah.
So, but you have that opportunity to pounce when you came in, but since then they've been good but not great. And like I said, the TV market thing's a little bit overblown. And if you are, say, the Big Ten, you think, I'm going to add TCU and that's going to get me the Dallas market. Well, no. I mean, like, the other thing is there's, like, in the Dallas market, there's way more Texas and OU and Texas A&M fans than there are TCU fans.
100%.
So, like, the three teams that can get you the Dallas market the most are already gone. They're already spoken for. So, it might get you a different chunk of it than – but I think, again, like we talked about that TV ratings or viewing thing last week, are you really going to make a decision over one school or not over 50,000 viewers? No. And it's also the views of not just the television market. What is streaming? Like, what's a streaming market?
Yeah.
What does that mean? Like, I don't even know what that means. Like, in fact, like, streaming companies only seem to release their data when it benefits them. So if you've ever watched a show on streaming and you're like, man, it seemed like a lot of people liked that show and it was on social media and people were TikToking and tweeting about, oh my God, what just happened on Manifest, I guess is the big deal right now on Netflix. Well, Netflix is only going to tell you Manifest is doing well. It's only going to tell you it's doing poorly enough for them if they have to cancel it.
Yep.
But otherwise, they'll just go like, yeah, here's the numbers. It's good. Fine. We're going to throw money at it.
# manifest.
Yeah. But like HBO Max, like, I don't know how well the Snyder Cut did, so I don't really know how to gauge streaming numbers, Yeah. And is it not necessarily streamers, but how many people can you get? Can I convince all the people to subscribe for this app and then forget about it? Because that's what cable TV is.
Sure.
You're paying for channels that you never watch and will never watch in a million years. You, your fiance, neither of you will watch them in a million years.
Yeah.
Between your whole cable bill, say you got the full kit and caboodle of 800 channels or 1,000, you're going to watch maybe between the two of you 20?
On a good week.
On a good year. Week, on a good year,
Yeah.
you're going to watch 20 channels regularly. And so streaming, like, all they want is your $5.99 to $10.99 or $15.99 a month. And once they've got it and you forget about it because what's $17? I mean, that's in most people's minds.
I'm with you.
And then it all adds up. It all adds up eventually. So
yeah, and whatever it looks like right now, it's going to look substantially different in 3 to 4 years. I really think Amazon's a huge player in this, which maybe that's another theory for another time. But bottom line, the streaming platforms, the streaming world is going to be, I think, definitely moving towards the college football market with how much money we're seeing. And so, yeah, I mean, the TV numbers, the streaming thing, it's really hard to get a good gauge on exactly where that's going. This whole thing to me feels like buying a stock when it comes to adding these AAC teams, especially like UCF. probably trending upwards, but the sample size is also pretty small because in 2015 they were 0-12. So it's like they're attractive now, yes, because they went, undefeated, had a national championship, quote unquote, and they've done really well in the AAC. Also, big student body, all of those things in Florida. But what do they look like in 5 years? If they go 0-12 again in 2 years, are they still attractive? Do you still want to add UCF? I would venture to say probably not.
Now, and the thing is, it's like, I think the best thing for the Big 12 to do if they add teams is just pick those schools in the big markets.
Yeah.
Because that's, like I said, it's not an exact metric, and, it's not the same, but at the end of the day, isn't that the best thing to do is, grab as many alumni from schools as you can and make it work?
Yeah.
Because that's what you need. Again, most of your viewing is in Texas. So where can you go to other population centers to where you have, at least you can say, look, here's the alum. Memphis is I don't know what the Memphis student body is, but it's a decent sized market. Also, FedEx supports Memphis. So
there you go.
That's a sponsor you could get.
Aaron Brown.
Exactly. And Cincinnati's a growing and emerging market. It's a big market city. Orlando is. So those are the ones I would go to. And Houston, even though that you don't really need that market, it's still and again, Houston is like Dallas. It's if you get Houston or SMU, then you've got Dallas and Houston. Well, no, you don't, because SMU, take SMU, TCU, Baylor, Houston, roll them all up together, and you still have way more Oklahoma, A&M, and Texas fans in Dallas and Houston than you do, everywhere else. So, and I guess you can throw probably Tech into that. Might help get you closer to that number, but again, the bigger schools are the bigger schools.
And my question is, how many schools of that caliber do you have to add? How many markets like that exist? I'm thinking okay, USF maybe, UCF in addition, Houston, like you mentioned, SMU. That's 4 teams. And at that point, are you just trying to keep the conference alive? At what point is it best to go your own way and try to, get your own bag in a different conference?
Yeah, I mean, there might be a time where you just have to pull the plug on it, and you've been keeping this thing on life support long enough, and that's it, So that's the line that here's the only line the Big 12 needs to cross. The Big 12 these 8 teams need to cross the line where Texas, Oklahoma, and ESPN pay them all the money that they're owed.
Yep.
Or the majority of it. Once they cross that line, then anything in the future was going to be less anyway. So now you have to go and try to find it on your own, try to make it better there. So I don't know. I think that's really the kind of the big thing with the Big 12 is, cross that line, stay together until you can put the screws to Texas and Oklahoma as hard as you can, which the lawyers might be able to loosen those a little bit for OU and Texas. But until that point, I don't know what you can do. I really don't, other than, see what's out there and see what happens. And again, I think that if some of these schools were that attractive to other conferences, we wouldn't be seeing this right now.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be seeing all this other stuff. The Alliance would have waited out and been okay, we'll add, and again, okay, it's not there's 8 teams. If 7 of them are attractive and Kansas State was the one you wouldn't want to add, and again, I'm just being hypothetical.
Sure.
I'm not saying it's not like you would just undo that whole thing because of the one team.
Yeah.
So to me, it means more of these teams were unattractive, or they would rather just see these teams fold off into different parts, get them on the cheap, and move on.
Yeah, I think the 2 things that I think about are, one, the longer this goes, the more confident I feel they'll get to cross that line, because when anarchy broke loose is when probably cooler heads wouldn't prevail, because you're oh my gosh, conference is going to the dogs, we got to find a home, this, that, and the other. There was a million different reports about the Big Ten, ACC, Pac-12, and all that. And so the fact that we've gotten to this point, the waters have kind of calmed down. It's okay, there might be some sort of plan, like you mentioned, to band together, get across the line, get what you're worth, and then try to figure it out from there. The second piece that I think is, okay, how much do you have to pay one of these schools to get out? Kind of like what we talked about with the whole tampering conversation. It's the biggest game of Jenga. If one of those teams decides, hey, we got a pretty sweet deal from insert conference here, then everyone else just probably goes back into panic mode, right? I wonder how much of that is going on, because the fact they're not including the Alliance makes me think there's a lot more going on that isn't being released or that we don't know. Maybe that's too much of a conspiracy theory. Maybe I'm, getting what's the phrase? Maybe I'm getting too conspiracy theory happy, whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it. But just the way that Oklahoma and Texas went about this makes me think, okay, there's a lot going on behind closed doors that we have no idea about. And so the fact that they're not jumping at the Big 12 makes me think, okay, maybe they know, that school is probably going to leave. We don't want to try and poach the Big 12.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's all a very confusing thing. And again, like I realize that they're all small schools, but to me there's value, and like
Totally.
it's not, if you already have a Wake Forest in your conference, what's adding a Baylor?
Totally.
Like what's, they're going to be good. I mean, they're going to be good and they're going to get you into Texas. So they're going to be good in most everything. And like, look here, the deal is football is the least cyclical of the sports. Like if you look at it or they have the longest cycles. It's the longest cycles. I mean, it's everything cyclical, but like football's the slowest, ticking clock. So if you get really good, like Clemson's going to be good for probably another decade or so until, for example, with Texas, all it took was, two bad recruiting classes at quarterback in a row and some whiffs on the offensive line, and all of a sudden you go from national power to also ran. For Alabama, look, Gene Stallings left, and it was a couple bad coaching hires that they made right in a row after Gene Stallings before Nick Saban brought them back to prominence. So everybody's got a story. Look, for Oklahoma, Barry Switzer left. John Blake came in. He could recruit. He couldn't really coach on the field. He wasn't an X and O guy. Bob Stoops came in. Excellent X and O guy, and his second year won the national title now, and they've kept at that same level pretty much. And their dips have been minor, little tiny dips.
Sure.
Oh, the quarterback got suspended for working at Big Red Motors, so we have to play another guy, or the defense isn't very good, so we'll get another defensive coordinator in here. All those, and like Clemson. They didn't start winning national titles until they got Brent Venables in there.
Yeah.
Okay. What happens when Brent Venables leaves? If they don't make another, hire that was the perfect fit for that, say Brent Venables goes and takes a head coaching job next year.
Remember Clemsoning? That was a thing.
Yeah.
Like, hey, can't win the big game.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's all these things that happen. Nebraska had a bad AD. Bottom line, they had a bad athletic director. Their good athletic director retired. They hired a bad one. The bad one left them in it. But it's still slow cycles. So, again, if you're basing it on, how many people are going to watch a football game or this team may not be good every year in football, well, you have teams that have been, SEC has South Carolina and Vanderbilt. They've been in the same hamster wheel forever. So, it's not – there's this big, narrative about the SEC and how great it is. It's it's got some big brand names, but also has some teams that are also rans.
And if the ultimate goal is to essentially take power back from the SEC and have a balance, is 49 not better than 41? Are you really tipping the scale that much if you don't include those 8 teams?
There's already 41-16.
Yeah,
the other thing is you're probably going to vote with them most of the time anyway, because what's good for the goose is good for the gander a lot of the time, but it does give you an alliance to where they can't, maybe they won't poach, your teams all, they won't decide, what, we'd really like North Carolina.
Yeah.
Come, 10, if you build that alliance, and maybe for 15 years or so before the ACC's grant of rights is up, you can build the ACC up. You can build the Pac-12 up. You can, if you're the Big Ten, you can keep pace with the SEC. I mean, you're already making more money than them now, but it's not going to be and if you're the Big Ten, you can't, there's more questions than answers, and there won't be until this is all over. Yeah. But, playoff expansion will probably shed some light on this, how much they do, if they do the full 12, or if if there's enough people in this alliance that don't want 12 and they want 6.
Yeah.
Then I still don't think it'd be 6. I think it would maybe back up to 8 with potential to grow to 12. But
I hope so. Yeah.
I know you hope so. Yeah. You're an elitist, but yeah, I think there's just so much stuff that could happen. We don't know about it.